Hey everyone, I'm going to talk a little bit about witchcraft and how it affected Europe in the 1500s and 1600s. So hopefully this will be helpful. So it begins in the 1500s, and the craze begins in the 1500s. What's an important distinction is that witchcraft existed prior to this, but there's two things that were different. One is that witchcraft wasn't even seen as bad. It was actually seen as bad because the Catholic Church in medieval times started associating them with Satan. They said that it was the devil's work and that it was just horrible. But even Protestants could get on board with this because it wasn't just a Catholic thing. There's actually a line in the Bible that says, and I quote, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." So witchcraft sort of went crazy. What happened is that people started turning in witches to the authorities, and back in the day, they didn't have innocent until proven guilty like we have in America. So an accusation could basically be a death sentence. So to give you a sense of what sort of happened, over 100,000 people in Europe were accused, prosecuted, and then killed. Usually they were burnt at the stake, but in England they were hung or hanged, whichever. And so the places where this happened was England, France, Germany, Scotland, etc. There were a lot, but those are some of the main important ones. Notice that it's the places where the Reformation hit hardest. That's very important. So, also what's really important is that it wasn't just fear of witches that was driving people. Like, people were scared of witches, sure, but they were equally scared of being accused, because while yes, people did actually believe that a witch could hurt you, a witch could kill you, hurt your children, your livestock, your finances, all of that, what they were even more scared of, I'd argue, is being accused. Because if you're accused, your life is over. Like, I think I already said this, but they don't have innocent until proven guilty. So it originally started in cities, because that's where the most densely populated areas were, but it eventually spread out to the further rural areas, and it stayed that way until the mid 17th century, 1600s. So you're probably wondering why anyone believed this at all, and that was because people confessed. And the reason that people confessed was because they were tortured into confessing. And we're going to go over the case of someone in specific. Their name is, let me find it, Suzanne Gaudry, and we're going to talk about them a little. So what happened is that someone would accuse you of being a witch, right? Say John is accused of being a witch. Well, actually, that doesn't make much sense. Let's say Sarah is accused of being a witch. Okay? So Sarah says, "No, I'm not a witch." Well, Sarah's neighbor John does not like this, reports her to the authorities for witchcraft, and say, France's police come get her. They say, "Are you a witch?" She says no. Then they torture her a little, and afterwards, if she still says no, they'll probably torture her some more until she says yes. And once she said yes, they would take that as a sign saying, "Hey, she's a witch. She said it herself." And look at it from Sarah's point of view. You're not going to stop getting tortured until you admit to being a witch. And so if you didn't admit, then you were kind of screwed. So lots of people admit, which is why so many people, over 100,000 people, were killed. Anyway, what were some practices that witches were accused of? They were accused of killing livestock, injuring kids, and bringing storms to destroy crops. What this actually was that people's kids got sick, people's cattle died, and they didn't do so well because their farming practices wouldn't improve until like the Green Revolution way later. And people were mad about that, so they wanted someone to blame it on, anything but themselves. So they're like, "Hey, witches." Also, some of the more extreme cases were them admitting to participating in sexual orgies with the devil. And that is exactly what it sounds like. So we have to ask the question, why? Why did this happen? So the why is, there are two main reasons. It's sort of religious and social. So the religious one's a lot more simple. I'll go into that one first. Religious reasons. So the Reformation has just happened, right? And that's exactly why the witchcraft craze is going on in areas like Germany. So Germany, Martin Luther, the Peasants' War, the Schmalkaldic Wars, all this stuff just happened, or is happening even as the witchcraft craze is going on. So everyone is really mad at each other. The Catholics are mad at the Protestants are mad at the Catholics, and it's not just that they're mad at each other, the Catholics are mad at other Catholics, like within their own religion, because different people disagree on what to do about, like you'll see in English, in the English wars, I think the War of the Three Henries, one of the Henrys believed, he was a radical Catholic, he believed in exterminating all the Protestants, and that was what you wanted to do, but not all Catholics agreed with him. So they were mad at each other as well. And the Protestants, the Protestants were crazy. They were like Calvinist here, Lutheranist there, Methodist here, there's Anabaptist. Everyone hated the Anabaptists though. So there was a lot of different ideas and ideologies going on. And what's the solution to someone disagreeing with you? Back then is not to have some civil discourse or to deal with it like a human being. It was to accuse them of being a witch. I'm not sure how that worked for males, because it was most often females, but we'll get to that later. It was to accuse them of being a witch, and boom, all your problems go away because they're dead. Which worked out pretty great for them. Not so great for the people accused. And you'll notice that it happened in Germany, right? Specifically southern Germany, right where Martin Luther was, because that's where the most tension was, most after Reformation, right? So, okay, so now there's the social reasons. So we already mentioned in class the price revolution had a lot to do with it, but it was also, I also want to talk about mercantilism because that was a really big part of it. So the prices go up, people are poor, they're all mad at each other, and mercantilism is here. So this has a few different effects. Before the price revolution and mercantilism really takes hold, people have these sort of conservative communal values where it's like you create a social safety net, right? If you're a farmer, for example, like I think we talked about this a little in class, like in the average village with the common land and then everyone else's land around it. If you are a farmer and you fail at life, literally, and don't have any crops because, say, a storm came, say you had a bad year that year, then everyone else would provide for you and your family, and in the hope that you would provide next year, that you would help out, right? So there was somebody to help you if you failed. But now all the prices are going way up. Not everybody has enough money. Everybody's having a bad year. It's not just one schmo, okay? So now there's mercantilism. Not only is it bad enough with the prices, but there's mercantilism. And what is mercantilism? Mercantilism is like capitalism on drugs, okay? Because capitalism is sort of like free markets, do whatever you want, I don't even care, right? Mercantilism is like, no, you must compete. You must be horrible. If you fail, then that means if someone else wins, then you fail. So before, there are these conservative communal values that say, hey, help out your friends, hey, help out your family, help out your community members. Now they're saying, hey, if you help out John over there, then you're going to get screwed. So you can't help out John anymore. Poor John. This leads to a ton of stuff, people breaking down, people getting super tense, and with people all mad at each other, what's the best way to handle this? Not by talking about your feelings like a normal human being, but by accusing people of witchcraft, which is just fantastic because it gets rid of all your problems. I'm just gonna pick up where we left off. Oh, okay, really important distinction. The rich also, like the rich, the property owners, saw the commoners as witches more often than vice versa. Because as we've seen with peasant wars, when peasant conditions get really bad, they sort of rise up and revolt, right? So the rich people are like, oh crap, this is gonna happen. I don't want this to happen, because a lot of the rich people, not just nobles, were people who benefited with the economy growing up. So they're commoners who just became property owners, became merchants, and they're like, I don't want to lose everything I just got. So they saw the people who had just been a part of them, they'd just been a part of the third estate peasants, and just like already they're seeing them as something else, something not even completely human, like not on their level. So they're saying, oh, they must be witches, right? Because they want to take my food. They were getting desperate. So it gave them an excuse to sort of look at them that way, look at them horribly. And they're also, it applies both ways, although not as much the other way, where the rich people were scared of getting accused of being witches. Okay, I said we would talk about women a bit. So women were particularly susceptible and exposed to witchcraft charges. It was not exclusively women, but majority women, definitely majority women. And the reason for this was because women had the least defense. Like with a man, maybe he could get legal defense, maybe he could get his friends on his side, but women, and particularly elderly women who didn't have the community on their side, charities were breaking down because of the price revolution, they couldn't provide for everyone. Mercantilism was there going, hey, care for yourself, not everyone else. So these old women who were just like desperately trying to make money, and by any means, maybe selling herbs or something along those lines, were accused, hey, those aren't herbs, those are magic, and you're a witch. So that made them particularly susceptible, but also really important is that not just were they the victims because they were the easiest to take advantage of. But society, it made sense to society that they would be the ones who turned to the devil, right? Because at the time, biology hadn't evolved enough, or, well, it had, but we didn't know enough about biology to make statements on the differences between men and women. And they thought, particularly judges of these trials and cases of accusations with witchcraft, believed that women were more desperate and sex crazed than men. They believed that their hormones were strong, not that they knew what hormones were, but they believed that women were more desperate for sex than men, right? Which is ironic given what biology actually revealed hundreds of years later. So, anyway, judges like what's-his-face, I can't remember his name, but there's this one judge in the textbook who's like, oh yeah, of course it's women. Of course women are going to be the judges more often. The devil's going to tempt them with sex. Of course they're going to say yes. So that was the sort of idea, that was what had people going, oh yeah, women for sure. Not only are they easy to take advantage of, I can accuse them and get away with it for nothing, but it's definitely more likely to be with them given the societal worldview. Okay, what else have we got? Okay, so it started subsiding. Why did it start subsiding? Okay, so it started subsiding because those social and religious issues started to go away. So what do I mean by this? Let's start with religious issues, right? Everyone's mad at each other. If you're a Calvinist or a Protestant, you're mad at the Catholics. If you're a Catholic, you're mad at the Protestants. What stops this? Nothing. They fight and kill each other. And that's the Schmalkaldic Wars. And that's the German Peasants' Revolt after. And that's the War of the Three Henrys after. And what you'll see is that this just keeps on heating up. And eventually what people realize is, hey, I'm a Catholic. My friend John, I feel like I've used John like 3 times, whatever. My friend John is a Protestant. And I could accuse him of being a witch. I could go to war against him and his people. But at the end of the day, I'm going to die, and I've got better things to focus on because I don't have food. So people came to a grudging respect. It's not religious freedom, not even close, but a grudging respect of each other, and they said, okay, whatever. Do what you want, I'm just going to live in peace. Well, not really, but I feel like kind of, briefly. So then there's also social issues. Ah, yes. So mercantilism and the price revolution is what's really dragging people down like this. Well, mercantilism is about to be replaced, or is about to start the process of being replaced with capitalism, or free markets, you might know it as. So with this happening, capitalism is not like mercantilism. Capitalism is sort of just like the lazy dude who doesn't care, right? That's how I'm going to explain it, because mercantilism is sort of like the evil dude who's just saying, oh, you have to do this, you have to compete, you have to screw over your neighbor in order to help yourself. It's you or him. It's hungry hippos, to use Dr. Isaacson's example. So that's replaced with capitalism. Capitalism says, hey, do whatever you want, I'm just going to make my cash. Cool? And so now that people aren't competing against each other so much, and they're making more money into like the end of the 17th century, or end of the 18th century, right? Like around the turn of the century area. They're like, okay, there's no need to compete against each other so much. We can start helping out. We can start not caring about each other so much. And these are actually some of the ideas that found America, but that's quite a while away. And one of the last factors, although this doesn't really apply so much to the time period that we're talking about, but later on, say end of the 18th century, 1700s are coming to a close, people are being more educated. The education rates are finally starting to rise, and people are realizing that maybe, just maybe, religion isn't right about everything. People are sort of coming to the conclusion that, hey, spirits are ridiculous, and maybe they are not real, and witches aren't real. And so nobody's really buying the witchcraft stuff anymore. And so we've got one more thing to talk about before I want to go into the example, which is the effects. So the effect is, I'm sure there's a lot of effects, but the main one that I want to bring up is the 30 Years' War, which I'm not going to talk about. I just want to say that that this witchcraft phase, which is basically just, witchcraft is like an embodiment, a representative of what's going on at the time. It's showing people are mad at each other. Protestants and Catholics are mad at each other. They're mad at their opponents. They're mad within their own groups and with other groups. They're mad at everyone. Everyone's mad, right? So the 30 Years' War is between the Calvinists and the Catholics, which, no pun intended, yeah, so it sort of causes this big war. And that's going to be a big effect, and we're going to talk about that in class, I hope. Maybe I'm going to get the example now of what would happen when someone was accused. So this is the trial of Suzanne Gaudry, and I'm not going to read you the entire thing. You can do that on your own time. It's on page 445 of the textbook. But basically, the story, the rough story, is that there's this lady who was accused of being the devil, Suzanne Gaudry, not the devil, is accused of being a witch or an agent of the devil, Suzanne Gaudry, and she confesses, but she confesses while they're torturing her. So she says, "Oh, no, that is not a real confession. You dragged that out of me. I was forced to say that." And so they bring her in for another interrogation, right, to see if she's lying or not. And basically the same thing repeats itself, where she says, "I'm not a witch, that was a lie," and they just torture her more. And this is in England, I believe, because they ended up hanging her instead of burning her. And so she just gets tortured into saying, "Yes, I'm a witch, and I met the devil 20 years ago," which really goes to show that how they got so many confessions out of people. Like, 100,000 people weren't witches. They got so many confessions out of people because they would torture you if you didn't. All right, that's basically it for witchcraft. Let me know if I missed anything or if I made a mistake. You can correct me however you like. Good luck.